Hello, Gasheads, and welcome back to the Rovers Report, where we haven't seen you for a while, and we are joined once again. I'm delighted to say by Tom. Comments: if you've missed Tom, let him know down below. I know I've definitely missed him. So, firstly, welcome back, mate. How have you been? Actually, I know you've obviously been to the last couple of away days. How have you found the games? And yeah, how have you been?
Cheers, mate. Yeah, all good, all good. Settling into a new place in London. Went to the Cambridge game on Saturday, which was pretty disappointing. Obviously, we're going to speak about that a lot, but pretty abject performance, in my opinion. Sort of a pseudo-intellectual performance. I think we sort
Yeah.
of postured to play it out from the back and looked like we knew what we were doing, and then couldn't do that. And when we tried to revert to direct style of play, it didn't come off as well. So pretty disappointing after solid first three games, excluding the Ipswich defeat. So yeah, pretty disappointing to be honest, mate.
Mhm. It's a shame, really, isn't it? Because I mean, personally, you look at those first three fixtures, you think, I'll take maybe 1 or 2 points. Didn't really expect anything from them, in all honesty. But we go and do well there, and then, like you said, go away to Cambridge. I think a lot of people say, "Oh, typical Rovers to do it," but for me, I was going into that with a lot of optimism. I think our attacking play had been fantastic the last couple of weeks, so you didn't really have any indication that that's how it was going to go, but I got a sense in the first sort of 10, 15 minutes, it was an odd game, wasn't it? Like, they obviously came with their plan, which I think, we've come out and said we want to pass it around the back, wait for a team to come on to us, and then we sort of hit him with that killer instinct, almost like, you know, sort of, I don't know what you'd say, like sort of, we create the counter attack situation ourselves. Well, yeah, so, but I was watching it and thinking, Taylor and Kramer are just playing it between themselves. Nothing's happening. They're sitting back. We've never been a team to, whack it long, the diagonals, especially Taylor. And I saw it a couple of times and just thought, what are you doing there? Collins isn't necessarily the tallest and the best in the air. Their right back, I thought, was fantastic, and he was, handling him well. And I just thought, overall, we could have done a bit more in terms of creativity, a bit of flair. It just seemed, didn't it? Like, I think a lot of fans have said it. We didn't really have a plan B on the day, and I was really disappointed, mate. I know you've just given your general thoughts there, but is there anything in particular, you thought we were lacking in, or you were particularly disappointed in?
With movement, it was so static in midfield, on the wings, and to be honest, up top as well. I know Marquis is a hard worker up top, but sometimes I think you need a movement, whether that's a spin off the defender with the ball over the top, and he's better when it's played into his feet and we play short. But yeah, it was just certainly a lack of movement for Taylor and Kramer to pass into. Just that's why they were playing it amongst the two of them for what seemed like an eternity at times. I wouldn't necessarily blame them if they don't have the options. And fair play to Cambridge, I don't think really they were given enough credit. I think from Joey, but maybe not from some of our fan base. I think Cambridge had a game plan. They were at home. They sat back. They executed that game plan to a T, and it worked. And
Mm,
we didn't have a plan B. That's also slightly concerning. But at the same time, this is one game against a team that will probably be mid-table at least.
yeah.
So I don't think we should be too disappointed. It's clear that we need to improve in some aspects, and I guess we'll move on to that. But it just seemed very slow. But that I think that originates from the lack of movement.
Mm. Yeah, you make a good point actually there, mate. It's doom and gloom in it, as it typically is after a defeat, which, like you said, you've got to look at this as a wider view. One game, we've had a good start to the season. And, on another day, John Marquis, I think, when he got that error from them when they headed the back pass, I was watching that and I was thinking, why haven't you had a shot there? So, that could.
JCH scores that much.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? But we're not going into that. We're not going into that, mate. Not least it yet, but yeah, and then Aaron Collins obviously has that one-on-one with their goalkeeper. I think, a confident informed Aaron Collins finishes that 9 times out of 10. So that was disappointing. But, that's what I mean. You look at those two chances, you think we get that first goal, we probably kill the game off. They've got to come out a little bit more. And, credit to them, the first goal was a good finish. Their second one was a bit lucky. Obviously, we're going for it. But yeah, I think that's a good point from you, and something that Rovers fans should sort of remember is, let's look at the wider picture. We'll take learnings from that. And as long as we do take learnings and implement them in the next few games is fine. But going from the positive, let's just delve into something that I think has been quite apparent the first couple of games, and something that me and you have definitely spoken about is the sort of how to phrase it. I'm not going to say the demise, but the lack of form of Aaron Collins. Of course, League One Player of the Season last year. At times was unplayable, and we've seen small glimpses of it this season. But for me, he hasn't been at the races. I don't think I'll ever level at a player like him a lack of effort, but it has come across that way in some games. And his quality certainly hasn't been there. Is there for you, mate, a particular reason why that might be, or is there what are you seeing when Aaron Collins is playing the way he is?
Not really. I think it sort of lacks a bit of intuition if you think sort of on face value, Collins' head is off in the championship, he wants that move or whatever. As you said, I don't think he's really that sort of player to sulk because he's not playing in a higher division. He's always given 100%. I don't really know what to sort of pinpoint to. I think it's clear that he's obviously lacking confidence in front of goal, and maybe that first goal make a huge difference. That's what happened when he first joined. Remember 2 seasons ago, he went, I think, sort of first 17, 18 games and without scoring, and he scored that first goal against Oxford in the FA Cup and changed the game. And then he didn't look back. So it requires a bit of patience. He has so much talent. We saw that last season, and he started incredibly well last season. Scored in the first game against Forest Green, scored a brace in the next game. So he obviously started on fire, which helped him. But we're 4 league games in, and I appreciate he wasn't on form in the second half of last season, but he does have quality. Who else are we going to bring in, honestly, who's going to perform better than him in that position? I think if we have him on the pitch, there's always going to be some chances that have been created. We've created 9 clear-cut chances. I'm not sure what the definition was that I saw on Twitter, so obviously don't take it as gospel, but I think it's more the fact that whenever he's on the pitch, chances are created, and I just think he brings that presence.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Because I just think people lack sort of an intuition if they really think that his head is sort of away from the club.
No, I agree. I don't think it's necessarily that. I think, if you wanted to have a look at some different angles on it, you could potentially say last year, alongside Elliot Anderson, he's clearly our out and out, let's all look at him, sort of the messiah for Rovers, isn't he? He's the centre of attention, getting all the plaudits. This year, Luke Thomas has come back in. Giovanni Brown's obviously come in, very similar player to him. And then also, we're being linked with the likes of JCH. Obviously, it became public. We had a bid rejected for Alfie May. If you wanted to look at it that way, Aaron Collins might be one of those players that wants to be the centre of attention, not necessarily in an egotistical way. Just that's when he feels it is best, when the team's relying on him. It could be that, like you just said there. It could also be, he just needs to get his eye in. We've seen it before. Once he gets that one goal, he's flying. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think in fairness, from the end of last season, he didn't really play particularly well. So, he might just need to get back into form. Also, I think, like you said, we do forget it's 4 games in, and he's probably still building that relationship with a lot of those players. Luke Thomas, when Scott Sinclair played, they'd often be playing in that 4-3-3 formation, which I think on Saturday we were in that, to be fair. But previously, it's been more of a 4-4-2. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. It's something to keep an eye on. I'm definitely not going to write him off at all yet, or anywhere near close to that. Because for me,
he's also not a left winger.
Yeah, exactly. He's
not left. Exactly. He scored all of his goals last season, or in the first half of last season, when he was playing as a 10, or even, to be honest, I think Joey just gave him completely free roles there, playing between the lines, whether that's out wide, whether that's through the middle. So to sort of pigeonhole him out on the left wing, I think limits him slightly. Whether that brings up the most in other players, I think there's an argument for that, but it's a trade-off, I think, at the same time.
Yeah, it's weird for me. I'm not quite sure about this 4-4-2 formation just yet. It's early days still. But Aaron Collins to me, like you said, is best when he's cutting in, or he's operating in that little space in between the midfield and the defence. And pushing him out at left mid doesn't really allow him that too often. And I think our striking option has been something that's been sort of doing the rounds within Rovers circles. I'd just like to touch on that now, mate. I think we'll start on John Marquis. I think a lot of Rovers fans admire his tenacity and his industry. But for you, is he, we've talked a lot this year about stepping up to that next level of trying to get into the promotion sort of picture. Do you think that a lot of Rovers fans are correct in saying that, we need someone else to level us up? Or do you think he could be that man?
I think his goals to minutes ratio is probably one of the best as a Rovers number 9 in recent seasons. But at the same time, if we're looking at a playoff push, he's not my starting number 9.
Mm-hmm.
That would be someone else. I guess we might touch on that, we might not. But certainly, I think he isn't agile enough for me, and there have been a few clear-cut chances that I think he should have scored.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean he's not a good finisher. I think he is. But if you really, really want to push for those playoffs and above, then you need someone who finishes the chances that he's missed. I think a great example was first 2-3 minutes against Charlton.
Mm-hmm.
He had his chance that on his instep. He's got half a yard and he hit it straight at the keeper.
Yeah.
Um, there's an argument for his link up play, but if we're going to be talking about a particular striker that we may or may not be interested in, their link up play is better.
Yeah.
I think there's not a reason for people to call that player lazy like some have. Um,
Well, let's touch on
what
it
do you
now.
think?
Yeah, we may as well go
Okay.
into it. I think it's quite clear that we're talking about JCH, and whether we get him or not is kind of a different thing. But in terms of the broader picture, if you're looking to replace Marquis, JCH is almost that complete striker. But what sort of player are you looking for to fill in, to fill that position? And are you looking for someone that's going to directly, try and be part of Barton's system and how he plays? Or do you think if someone like JCH comes along, doesn't matter what system you play and you have him?
I think the latter, to be honest. I think JCH, as D-Max said in that podcast with someone, I can't remember who it was. JCH is a League One GOAT, and
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly disingenuous, or I think people just don't understand football if they think JCH's link-up play is not top notch. He was the top scorer. He's got 31 goals in a season in which Posh were promoted. I can understand if they weren't promoted that season, it would show that he doesn't bring other players into play and other players didn't score enough. But it's completely wrong to think that he's lazy, or I think it's completely it shows a complete lack of footballing intelligence. I think
No, I
people
agree.
to say that the guy, even when he was at Rovers, his link-up play was good enough for me. He came in when we were on our knees. We were in the relegation zone, saved us, scored about 29 goals in 57 league games. Let's not forget the game Ghana took over against AFC Wimbledon on Boxing Day 2019. We were second in the live table.
Yeah.
We were fourth before that game after beating Ipswich home. He was our main striker. Had things gone well with Ghana, he may well have got us promoted that season. I think it's a complete no-brainer for me. Obviously, there's a certain amount we would be able to afford. I don't know if our FFP comes into it, but the cat's out of the bag, I guess, in terms
Yeah.
of this conversation. But I don't know. What do you think? Because personally, it's a complete no-brainer for me.
100%, mate. I think stats can lie in a lot of situations, but I think with a striker, the stats, they can't really lie. Do you know what I mean? Where you look at him and you think, I don't care if he doesn't do anything else. If he gets us 25 goals a season, I honestly couldn't care less. I think that obviously there's a couple of exceptions for that if he's literally doing nothing else. But like you said, he does bring other players into it. I think he'd be perfect for our squad. Whether we get him or not is a different question. I think obviously Barton can sell him a good project, but is he really gonna want to drop down to the team that finished 18th last season? I'm sure that there's clubs that will probably be able to outbid us, offer better wages, but you hold on to that bit of hope. not Portsmouth, sorry, Peterborough obviously have a very clear transfer policy, don't they? Anyone with 1 year left is transfer listed, and that might work in our favour. But I think if I had to, gun to my head, I'd probably say he won't end up at us. But it's odd, isn't it? I think in terms of striking options, I don't know who else you got there, and what sort of striker we need. I think we'll touch on him in a second, but Ryan Loft is obviously our sort of plan B, isn't it? I think when it was getting physical and more long ball style against Cambridge, we brought him on. But, I don't think he's quite at the level yet. So are we looking for someone else to come in that's, a Coburn sort of style? I think for me, I'd like to see a quick, young, potentially Premier League or Championship low knee that, alongside the industry that Marquis offers, has got that something extra where he can run in behind. He's going to harass defenders and also is a good finisher. But I think if you're happy to, mate, let's move on to Ryan Loft. I've given my sort of thoughts on him there, and don't get me wrong, I don't have anything to say bad against him in terms of personality or he seems to give his all. But do you personally think he's good enough for this level, even just as a substitute for us?
I would say no. He needs regular first team football in order for us to maybe assess that question again. And so I think a loan to League Two for, obviously I don't think they have 6-month loans anymore, but a season long loan perhaps with a recall option would suit everyone. I think he's not going to show enough in sort of 20-minute periods of coming off the bench, but at the same time he's shown that he's not good enough to start. So with that in mind, if he's under contract, he has to go out on loan, I think. I completely agree with an alternative to JCH would be that sort of Premier League Championship striker on loan. I guess it's just the fact that we seem to really be going for it this summer, more so than I think we both thought at the beginning of the summer when we recorded those videos about the transfer market. So I think Loft should go out on loan. To be honest, I think that'd be best for everyone.
Yeah. Well, it's the thing, isn't it? I think in years gone by, you might even have it with a centre back position as well. Say they might not play every game, but let's get an experienced striker or centre back in. We've got that with Marquis now, so he's probably happy to sit on the bench for play maybe 15 games starting. You don't want that with Loft. Someone of Loft's age and that sort of player, you want them to be pushing to start. So I think Coburn would be a perfect player to get back. Whether we can do that or not, I think he's been in and around that Middlesbrough squad this season already. The striking options is an interesting part of our squad because, I think, a lot of fans look at, if you look at it on paper, you think fantastic, but it has become apparent, I think, that, we do need additions. So that'll be an interesting one to see what happens. You guys, let me and Tom know what you personally would do. Would you send Loft out on loan? Do you think Marquis is, capable of leading the line for Rovers this season? Do let us know and we'll get back to you with our thoughts. I guess sort of moving on from our strike force to the midfield. I think a few people have, pointed a few questions at Sam Finley actually and said, was he at it on Saturday? I think, this has been amplified by the re-signing of Bogard. And I have to say he looked excellent when he came on. I think it's a bit harsh on Finley. I think he admitted he had a bit of a niggle still going into this game. And, everyone can have a bad game. But, I'll be interested to hear actually now, mate, what would your starting midfield be under the assumption that, we're going to have probably, let's say we're going to go for that 4-4-2. Who would you be putting in that midfield?
It would be Bogard and Ward for me.
Straight away, you're happy with that?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, I think Finley is club captain. I think he should definitely start quite a few games. But if we're going off the strongest midfield, I'd say Bogard and Ward would be my starting two in the centre of the park.
Mm-hmm. Just touching on that a bit more, then, mate. What is it for you that Bogard offers differently to Finley? Why do you think he would complement Ward well?
I think he's better with the ball at his feet. I think he doesn't play as many longer passes. I think that sort of suits us a little bit more. But I think he's just a little bit more agile. I think when he runs with the ball, you saw that on Saturday, there were a few times when he was fouled and we won free kicks to put into the box. He seems a lot more calm on the ball. But I think Sam Finney's a fantastic midfielder. He's been one of the best players for Rovers over the last 2, 3 seasons now. So I think it would be pretty cruel to sort of dismiss him off the back of one admittedly poor performance from him, especially if he's injured. I think ideally it'd be a rotation. If you want to win or do well in the league or reach the playoffs, you need to have a squad which you can rotate and have a combination of players that is sort of equally as strong. So I think it's good that we have three central midfielders and four, including Rossiter, who are probably as good as each other. It would just be that argument for me that I think going forwards, I think Bogard is better.
Yeah, no, I agree, to be honest, mate. And I think, you know, we can do a little bit of it now, actually, because it is interesting, especially with Wilson's coming back. Friend, I think, is now available. Same with Gibbons. If you're just doing our sort of, starting team now, for me, I don't quite get this 4-4-2. I think Barton obviously has a plan. For me, I'm going 4-3-3. Keeper's obviously Cox. Right back at the minute, I'm sticking with Hall. But I think Jack Hunt's going to be an interesting one, obviously. So yeah, we'll see about that. But Hall and Gordon still for me. I think a lot of people were praising Kramer a little bit, or I saw the Bristol Post rating. They gave him a 6. I thought he was, I think fair enough. He won a lot of his headers and he was solid, but he gave the ball away a lot, and that frustrated me actually. Connor Taylor the same. I'd be tempted to maybe drop Kramer, bring in Wilson. And then in midfield for me, actually, like I said, I like the 4-2-3-1. For me, I'd go Bogard Ward. That's a lovely screen for the back four. And then in front of them, I'd probably go Giovanni Brown, Aaron Collins up top, and then I'd have Sinclair and Thomas on the wings. For me personally, I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially with that front four. We saw that in pre-season when Collins was playing as the 9. We looked really fluid. That first half against Cardiff in pre-season was some of the best football I've ever seen from a Rovers team in recent times. I think it's a hard one, this formation, because sometimes I think it's a 4-4-2. Then we seem to be playing 4-2-3-1 or 4-4-1-1, depending if the wide men sit back. I guess it comes down to the fluidity of things, but certainly the 4-2-3-1 I think is going to be our strongest. And I think Collins offers that ball in behind, which Marquis doesn't really offer as much. We saw that again in the Cardiff pre-season game. There were a number of times when Collins was played in down, that first ball round the corner, Collins is already making the run. That's his natural position. He's always played as a striker. So I'd agree the front four. I think Cox in goal, he's been pretty difficult in terms of the goals that he's conceded, whether he's being able to make a save or not. I don't think he
not for me,
could have done much better.
Okay.
His distribution is pretty good. So there were some of his kicks on Saturday which didn't come to fruition, but to be honest, that was more poor positioning from the outfield players. I think you're right about Hunt coming in. He's going to be starting and providing competition for Hall. I think maybe they're going to probably play the equal amount of games. Gordon left back. I agree with bringing in Wilson. I think we really need some seniority at the back. And I think Connor Taylor starts ahead of Kramer. And then Bogard, Ward as the holding 2, and then the front 4, as you said.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, I might be wrong here, but, I think the positions that Connor Taylor and Luke Thomas have been picking up, not Connor Taylor, Aaron Collins and Luke Thomas, when they've been on those wings, I think they've been getting back a lot more. And I think that might be what Barton's thinking is when he's playing this 4-4-2, is that the wingers can come back and help. I think if you've got Bogard in there, you don't necessarily need wingers that are going to come back as much, because, he's sort of like a bit like a Caicedo in a way. He can very easily drop in at right back, centre back. He's quick, he's powerful, and he'll provide that cover. So,
concede penalties as well.
What's that?
Concede penalties as well.
Yeah, exactly, mate. He's perfect for that role. So, yeah, for me, I think it might be the defensive worries of Joey Barton, but I think Bogard can cover that. So yeah, again, let us know your starting 11 for this weekend's fixture against Wickham. I think it'll be an interesting game. And then finally, mate, just to touch on something a bit more of a negative to round this off, and that's the James Belshaw situation. I think we haven't spoken about this really since that interview came out. It's a bit of a sad one. I think it probably spells the end of Belshaw's time at the club. You never say never, but I think if his agent's actively trying to force a move out, and we know that Joey Barton's not the type to sort of, put up with passengers or those that are unhappy. I've seen today that Ben Foster's actually announced his retirement. He obviously can't hack it in League Two with Swindon putting 5 past him. So good luck to him. I'm sure that in my opinion, that's a poor move. He's obviously gone there, got his fairy tale content, that story, and then he thought, fuck this, I don't fancy it. So I wouldn't be surprised if Belshaw ends up at Wrexham. But yeah, it's a sad one, isn't it, mate? Because Belshaw obviously was a massive part of that promotion season. I think I can't remember if he did get player of the season, but I think he was up there for me. But yeah, I think he's obviously going to move on. And I hope Rovers fans don't hold it against him, because he has been a good servant to the club. But yeah, just finally, mate, your thoughts on that and how you think everything's been handled.
Very much echo your sentiment there, mate. It's just the consequence of having two strong personalities. One wants everyone committed to the cause, even if they want to be on the bench. But at the end of the day, even for a goalkeeper, it's still a relatively short career.
Yeah.
Belshaw wants to play, especially considering he's 31, 32 now. If he wants to play, I'm never going to hold that against him. I think he's definitely a cult hero. He's always given everything for the club. I think he was really scapegoated at times last season. I did feel sorry for him. That being said, if he doesn't want to be part of the project, then I'm afraid that I think obviously spells the end of his time at Rovers. I think a move for him to a Midlands club, or maybe even like sort of in League One. I think he can definitely play in his division. So I just want to say I wish him all the best. I think 99.9999% of Rovers fans would say exactly the same. He was an absolute hero in that promotion season. Also made some really, really good saves last season. I think you can see that he's. I've been seeing tweets that sort of about his personality as well off the pitch, from the sort of mental health perspective, and sort of volunteering with speaking at group sessions. So you can only really applaud him for the way he is, and you can see that on the pitch how passionate he is. So just want to say like all the best to him if this means the end of his time at Rovers. But I think everybody's going to be saying that, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with all of that, mate. I think you spoke really well there, and it's goodbye to James Belshaw potentially, and it's goodbye from us. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you have enjoyed it, leave us a like. Let us know your thoughts on all of our opinions in the comments down below. Thank you, Tom, for coming on, and we will catch you guys later.